Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another exciting episode of the Grief Let's Talk About It podcast. You guys know who it is. This is Tony Lynch. I'm the host of this podcast. And yes, we are your number one show for bringing you stories around death, dying, and grief and all the messiness that comes in between with some amazing people out here changing people's lives one heartbeat at a time. Now, this is a live stream, so if you have any questions or comments for either myself or my guests, please put them in the comment section. We'll be sure to answer them as we go. Now, before I bring on my next guest, I would like to say that this is for educational purposes only. Now, without further ado, guys, help me welcome my next guest, Kristen Elliot, to the show. Kristen, how you doing, brother?
I'm well. That was quite the epic intro you have to this podcast.
Well, thank you very, very much, man. You know, I'm excited. From the last time that we talked, I was really looking forward to this conversation because it brings a whole new perspective on having conversations around especially the work that you do and how important it is, right? Because you tackle some really, really deep issues, man. And so, you know, I'm definitely looking forward to this. Now, before we get into your story and your journey, introduce yourself to the audience. Tell people who you are, where you're from, and about the work that you do.
Sure. Well, thank you for the opportunity to be on your show. It's a delight to be here. And my name is Kristen Elliot. I've been a health coach for about 20 years. And I got into this work probably like a lot of people. I needed to get my own health in order. And so I took a couple years essentially just to do that, and had the good fortune to cross paths with a chiropractor after about a half dozen medical doctors basically were no use to me. And so this guy changed my paradigm of health, of nutrition, of how the world works, how the medical system works, and just kind of opened my eyes to what I didn't know about how to heal the body. And so I've been at this. If you stick with health coaching long enough, you're going to continue to iterate yourself and solve the next problem you find. And that's really been a short version of my journey. I started out with nutrition, worked as a personal trainer for 10 years, and then kind of almost graduated, I guess you could say, into more holistic health. So we ran brick and mortar facilities. We had up to 40 employees. We had about 10,000 square feet, and we aggregated a bunch of different holistic disciplines into one place. And so I've always had that kind of holistic mindset, trying to find what is the upstream issue that's creating this person's downstream symptoms, lifestyle, or scenario. And in so doing, eventually in 2017, we closed that. We moved more into the life coaching and holistic health realm. And now I find myself kind of at the crossroads of a new model of health. I work with other doctors and coaches, some more as a kind of a collaborative and some more intensely, to help create holistic detox programs for people to really recover from many things. But pertinent to your show and your audience, one of the big challenges we find is that one major upstream reason people get so sick is because of grief. It's because of trauma. It's because of a lot of the upstream hard knocks of life that have created mental loops. It's created emotional identity issues. And so often that is the toxic upstream thing that we have to deal with before the physical body can respond. And so I'm really at this crossroads of kind of the mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual when it comes to helping someone heal. And so that's the work we do. We have coaching programs designed to really figure out where someone is very holistically. And then I actually get to work with other doctors and brainstorm and think on how do we create a person's plan based on their health and their budget and their lifestyle. And so anyway, that's the fast forward version of like 20 years of being a health coach and doing this work.
That is exciting. And first and foremost, I want to say thank you for the work that you do. You know, holistic approaches to people's lives have now starting to take a turn, and people are starting to pay a lot more attention to it, right? Mm-hmm. Because people don't understand that the nervous system is affected by what we put into our body. Being a personal trainer myself, bodybuilder, things like that, nutrition has been a huge part of it, but also it's been an intricate part in my healing, especially when it's dealing with grief. How does it affect these things? And you've said it. You laid a whole gambit out there: identity, right? Healing those things that the doctors may not be able to diagnose because they're not looking for the trauma. They're not looking for those unresolved griefs and things like that. They're looking for basic things, for the most part. And I hate to say it that way, but that's what it seems like. Yeah, you know. So what are your thoughts on that? Let's talk about how important it is to heal the nervous system when a person has gone through something traumatic or withholding or not healing from their grief symptoms.
So when you say nervous system, define that for me so I'll make sure I'm answering your question.
So the nervous system, as we all know, like this is something that I learned in my path of learning about grief. Most people live within their head, right? And the
Mhm.
body does something totally different. So the synapses kind of rewire itself. The nervous system um, goes into a shock where your brain will tell your body something, but if the connection isn't there, your body won't respond. In
Yeah.
turn, we walk around what I like to call um, a grief fog,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
We know instinctively up here what we're supposed to do, but if there's no communication between the two,
Hmm.
the body does what the body goes into like a routine.
Yeah.
And what ends up happening is that most people will go around and not dealing with those things that are trapped into the lungs, into the heart, into the intestines, and things like that. And they end up with undiagnosed ailments,
Yeah. Yeah,
right?
you're right. No, you don't see grief or self-image on a blood test. You don't see the nervousness. You don't see the motivation sinkholes. You don't see the excuses on a blood test. But they're often the biggest thing that creates the scenario why someone heals or why someone doesn't. And if we don't
Mhm.
understand or somehow inventory their emotional landscape, and often I do that through having them tell their story or hearing how they tell a story as much as anything, because sometimes it's the language they use that's the flashing red light of like, oh, here's where the toxins are. Here it's a,
Right,
I
right.
it's absolute language. It's can't, don't, always, never, every, and you start painting yourself into a corner where you couldn't defend those black and white binary statements in court, but they sound or they feel true, and you take on the identity of a person who can't do things or is too this or too that to be able to try things, and to your point, it can end up in things like, as you know, it's more extreme, like dissociation. Where I had one client who actually, she gets so dissociated, she actually burned her arm with an iron one time and couldn't feel it. She was so
Mm.
in so much trauma from her past, or so almost like outside her body, to kind of frame it in a way where she's observing that I I should feel that, but I don't. And there's a disconnect that happens when there's too much grief, too much trauma, too much
Mhm.
um, of something to overcome, that sometimes the best thing the body can do is just turn off particular sensations. And we end up in this weird world of, I feel like I know what to do, but I can't make myself do it. Or I have knowledge, but I'm not putting it into action. So do I really believe it? And we lose arguments about, yes, it's probably going to be helpful if I went to bed on time, or if I drank more water, or exercised, or ate better. But the impetus to do it seems to be missing. And often it is that disconnect you're talking about, where if we don't have some sort of clue, there's some pinning in, where is this tendency coming from, and why am I either detached, or why am I overly emotional about this, or why do I grit my teeth and I'm angry with someone about something. If we don't have an ability or a toolkit to inventory those sensations, those feelings, those behaviors, they do tend to stay in the mysterious world. And often it's just a rewinding of the storytelling. Things happen to us, and there's things that happen because of us. And sometimes teasing out the difference, like a lot of things that anyone has experienced in life happened to them, but we often take it on as, it happened because I was somehow defective. Well, now we've got a storytelling problem. Things that happen to you aren't necessarily because you were worthless. But you might have taken on an identity of someone not worthy of something because
Mhm.
like something like that could have possibly happened to you. So it's in the storytelling where we can start to, in your words, rewire the nervous system to make these connections and start to ground ourselves in a more felt, appropriate path out of this thicket or this fog, like you talked about, where we just don't quite know what to do. So anyway, hopefully that was a reasonably good setup to answer your question there.
No, it's great because it segues into the question that I was, as you were speaking, I was thinking about it. I was like, the disassociation, and I'll
Mhm.
get to the question that most people will feel is because one, they have a hard time trusting
Mhm.
themselves in that process because the body will go into a
Mhm.
survival mode, right?
Right.
And it's the flight, fight, or freeze mechanism that the body automatically does to keep you safe from what you're already feeling. So a lot of times the emotions will turn off, and what people don't understand is that it can go either which way. A person can seem very cold and callous, or they can just or they can seem very, very deep, um, emotionally attached to certain things. And so it is it is paramount that people really understand that and learn the concept of trusting yourself during this process,
Hmm.
right? But as Westerners, as what I found was that we're not taught these things. We depend a lot on doctors to diagnose us and give us medication. I think that's the huge part that we really should talk about. Like being dependent on medication.
Hmm.
Now medication, don't get me wrong, it has a place, but I don't think people really understand that there's ups and downs that come along with that. And I think you're the perfect person to be able to talk about these things, from just your experience, from what you've seen.
Yeah. Yeah, well,
So,
I've seen a lot over the years, and I guess what I didn't expect was how much trauma and storytelling were integrated in someone's health. I was, starting in the nutrition and fitness realm, and then hiring chiropractors and naturopaths, acupuncturists, et cetera. I was largely just of the mindset that I could get at this whatever was bothering a person in the physical world, and often I had to really. It took me a while, maybe slow on the uptake, you could say, but it finally clicked that I've got to address, wait a minute, this person's telling themselves a story. And then I came across the book, The Biology of Belief, and it really helped me connect the dots between our thoughts literally give instruction manuals for how our cells are going to respond. And
right,
if our
yeah.
thoughts are toxic, or if our identity is such that we are limited and we're telling ourselves we can't heal. And so you start studying the placebo effect and you realize the power the mind has to influence the biology, and whether that's fake knee surgeries that are just as effective as real ones, or whether that's they rub, something poisonous on one arm and something innocuous on the other. But they tell the person that it was the opposite arms they did that to. And the person manifests according to what they were told, not according to what was done. And it shows you that the mind made it real, or the mind stopped the other thing from becoming real. And when you realize how profound that is in the human frame, that we can think ourselves well or we can think ourselves sick. And as
Mhm.
we start to, as I've worked at helping people identify that storytelling, it can be, one conversation and they're just a different person, and they recognize the pattern and they stopped it. And other times it's this mountain of trauma over the course of a lifetime, let's say 5 6 decades of trauma, and it takes a while to unpick and get to, like, which one of you guys is in charge over here, like which story, which old wound, which rule rules the roost and tells the other ones that we're still going to stay in this old frame. And once, like, you pick the layers down, you get to the, who's the boss in here? Which story is the deepest or most traumatic, or which is the identity thing I don't feel like I can let go of? I can't let
Mhm.
go of. There must be something wrong with me, or these things wouldn't have happened to me. Like, sometimes that's the deep story. Sometimes the deepest story is I'm literally inadequate. Maybe some people find me worthy, but I don't have what it takes anyway. Well, that can be a pretty deep story. Or there's no purpose, there's no point. Who cares? Why bother? Sometimes that's the deep story. And there's
Yeah.
nothing to ground. Motivation doesn't have anywhere to grow roots because they're stuck in this what's the point mindset. So those are some of the deepest ones, but you can also have self-pity, you can have entitlement or victimhood or anything like that. Those can also be major emotional roots that, until they are pulled up, there's going to be this emotional wall that really prevents you from the healing that you're capable of, or the joy you're capable of, that life
Right.
can be
Yeah.
kind, that relationships can go positively, that not everyone is out to get you. And yes,
Mm.
it's foolish to think maybe something could go wrong here, but it's foolish to say nothing could ever go right and to live and play small the rest of your life too. So
That's
where do
true.
we find that balance? How do we practice vulnerability and know that once in a while you might get burned, but without it, you're not going to have any friends, like, or have any
Mm.
deep friends for that matter. So often when those new thoughts start to crystallize into, practiced action, suddenly the person's confidence grows a little bit. Their biology goes, I can breathe again. I
Right.
I don't have to live by that old rule, really? And then their gut issue goes away, or their breathing slows down, or their headaches mysteriously disappear, or any number of symptoms start to lessen because they're not holding their results so tightly, or they're protecting themselves from every threat, and there's a demon behind every bush. The world is so much kinder when you just, one, stop taking yourself so darn seriously and stop thinking everything's a threat and start to look for possibility. Man, the world gets kinder, and sure enough, your body responds to that.
Yeah. And I think, just to add to what you're saying, because you're absolutely right. And you said something that I want to touch on. Most people, I think that a lot of people that have gone through traumatic experiences, they find comfort in victimhood,
Mm-hmm.
right? And these are people that are, sometimes are seeking attention, right? Because maybe they didn't get it enough. Maybe the trauma was so traumatic, or so devastating to the body that the only way that they feel is when other people tend to put their attention around them, right? And this is what I like to call when a person says, and then I love that you said this, listen to people's stories. A lot of times people will say, I want to be the center of your world.
Hmm.
If you ever heard this before, please pay attention to that, because that is someone who either has gone through or could be a multitude of things, gone through something traumatic over and over and over again, has abandonment issues, has gone through, maybe struggling with addiction or something like that, right? And so what they're doing is that they're using the attention that you get to have an excuse to continue this toxic pattern of sympathy. Now, before I let you answer that, I want to pose this question that was given to us on Instagram. Honor your heart. Thank you for tuning in, my friend. And they say, do we need to know the particular trauma, or can we release from the body other ways? So I'll pose that question to you. What do you think?
I don't know that you do. I think it can be helpful, and sometimes it can speed you up, but sometimes you can recognize the symptoms of it enough to just start to disarm it, and you may figure it out 10 years later after you kind of put it to rest. So I don't know that you, especially when it's pre-verbal or it happened to you as a kid, there can be traumatizing things that are just like, even people I've known they don't really have much memory of things. And then as they start to heal, they start to remember a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes healing can precede memory returning, but it's nice when you go, there's this bully, there's that narcissistic parent, there's this abusive person in my past, and you can forgive them. You can frame a different story. You can recognize if you had any contribution to that, and you can forgive yourself and move on. But sometimes you just won't know, and it's okay. So I would be looking for, one of the things we teach we have an emotional mastery course that we teach. There's at least 12 that I've found so far, predictable human longings. Every single person has them. There's nobody who's been like, yeah, I don't want any of that. And this is beyond food, air, water, and shelter, right? They're longings, they're emotional cravings that all of us have. They're universal. And if they are unmet, our behavior will subconsciously or consciously shift itself to try to seek the fulfillment of that longing. Two that came to mind as you were talking were validation and belonging. Somebody that needs to be the center of your world is aching to belong. They're starving for some validation. And so sometimes you can find the roots of the trauma without finding the story by kind of reflecting on the longings that you have. And, once you understand, what is it that I really want? Like when you're hungry, you don't go get a book. You want food. And when you're lonely, sometimes you go to food. Like, okay, well, no, I'm actually lonely. So what does it look like to find adventure and romance and belonging? Like, how would I find a healthy version of that? And what have I gravitated toward? And what you're gravitating toward can illuminate, hey, this is what I really am longing for. I'm longing for somebody, for a place to be significant, to matter to other people. I'm longing for fairness. I'm longing for dignity to come back into the puzzle. And those longings can help you go, that's the ache I'm trying to fill. That's why I keep getting stuck in this rut of oversharing and ending up with an oversharing hangover or insecurities, because I don't understand myself yet. Once you understand what drives you, you understand who you are as a person created in the image of God, fully known and fully loved by the creator of the universe, you can start to cut off some of the reasons for some of the poor behaviors And as they slowly fade away, you're naturally doing healthier things and you start to feel better. And then sometimes healing comes from that. So long answer to the question, but hopefully that was helpful.
No, I think that was perfect. Honor your heart. What do you think about that? Let us know. Um, so, which leads me to my next question. I want to talk a little bit more about the holistic
Mhm.
healing parts of it that you've discovered in
Mhm.
helping individuals navigate this, but also coming to a place where they recognize these patterns and begin to change their routine.
Mhm.
Um, so let's talk about the holistic beginnings, because what a lot of people don't understand is that everything that you need is already provided for you. And the foods that you do put into your body can be very damaging, since we found a lot of chemicals in it, even in the waters that we drink, the
Mhm.
lead, all of the harmful chemicals that are in our food, the things that they spread along with the coating to keep them from, eventually, rotting out, right?
Mhm.
And people become addicted because these properties that they do add into these things, our fruits and vegetables, things like that, are designed to be addictive but harmful to your body,
Mhm.
right? So let's dive deeper into the holistic approach that, say for instance, if myself came into your office
Mhm.
and I'm dealing with heart problems, I'm dealing with, deep depression, or, severe anxiety or something like that, just not really myself.
Yeah.
And you sit me down and you have this conversation with me, and I begin to tell you my story,
Yeah.
right? I can go, hey, um, I remember these things, X, Y, and Z, childhood molestation, alcoholism, being in the gang, watching people die, losing all of these individuals. What would be your approach for someone like myself?
Great question. I love that. Part of what I've learned to do over the years, I kind of ask questions in three different veins. So I ask questions in the health history lane. Just tell me the health history, symptoms, diagnoses, things that have happened to you in the physical realm. I'll ask questions in the, we'll call it the mindset realm, or the mind and emotions, trying to understand the undercurrent of the story that's being told. Is it coming from a fearful place? Is it coming from a just sometimes knowing you were abandoned or orphaned, or that you had one parent, or you had a narcissistic parent, or whatever? The stories that you unearth are instructive, and I'll typically dig a little bit if I find something that is more of a flashing red light of this is probably a major thing that went on in this person's life. That can be a divorce, that can be a bankruptcy, that can be the loss of a loved one, or any number of things. But the emotional landscape, and then what blends with that at the third piece. So there's the biology, there's the psychology, the mindset, and then there's context. Like, what moving parts does this person's life have? And that's something that, for whatever reason, most of the health world just ignores, and everyone needs the same thing: swallow this pill and take this potion and do these exercises. But the context of, what am I interrupting by asking the person to do this? What things make claims on your time? Are you married? Do you have kids? Do you have pets? Do you have a super onerous job, or are you retired and you got all the time in the world? They're very different scenarios. And if I don't understand the context in which the changes would need to be made, it's really hard to give somebody a plan. Because if I understand the reverb of, okay, this person's, let's say that maybe they're financially fine, but they're time poor, and now we have to work with. I can't solve all this at once, nor could you, because it's impossible to do all those things at once. So let's step back and let's get strategic. So I'm gonna filter through those three areas, and then it's really a collaborative approach to see where are you most motivated to change. Sometimes we start with our mind body cleanse, because it really is, until your self identity has been firmed up and you're not crying at the drop of a hat and you feel like you're worth the effort to do this. We're not going to make a lot of gains in the physical realm until we button up the emotional. And other times it's opposite. Sometimes you get some good wins in the health realm and the physical realm, and sometimes that means the major thing we have identified as the reason we are so sick. If you just look at our appalling health statistics in North America, for example, 6 out of 10 people have a chronic health condition, at least one. Some people have multiple, which is disgusting, because it used to be 1 out of 10 back in the 30s. Now it's 6 out of 10. The only thing that offers a reasonably logical explanation for that is not that we suddenly lost interest in our health. It's that we have been slowly poisoned over the last many decades, and we are in a very toxic environment. And that has to be dealt with if we are going to get this person well. And so one of the big things that we do, or we really shine, is we help create comprehensive detox programs for people. And so we work on balancing the microbial colonies inside people, parasites, molds, bacteria. We've got to get the biome functioning and have a level of resilience and breadth. And then we go after metals and chemicals and plastics and pesticides and all the other garbage that is literally gunking up our engine. Because if you do not get that out, you're going to have a hard time rebalancing anything. And that's why our health has been eroded from the inside out from these chemicals literally rotting us. And microbes then have a feast with all the toxins and the dead tissue, and it gets really difficult to heal. So if you're overweight, if you have a health condition, I promise you're toxic, hands down. Like, all of us have to deal with toxins, but not all of us bear the symptoms of being in a toxic environment because our purging systems function. And so we just help say, okay, there's basically our secret sauce is three things. We cut off the influx of burden, so the toxin. We figure out everywhere it's coming in, and we just work to cut it off as aggressively as we can. Sometimes that's simple, like stop drinking aspartame or something. But we also work to purify the stuff that's already in there. Your cells, if they're not able to purge the toxins, they're going to store it inside. So you're not going to find toxins on most blood tests because the toxins are in your interstitial fluid, all the wet water between your cells and inside your cells. For them to feel safe to get that out, you got to flush the system. So once that clicks, we unburden the body, we purify what's already in there, and then we just nourish the body back to health, right? A clean but undernourished body is still not going to heal. We have to nourish it back to health. So that's really the simple nature of what we do. It's unburden, it's purify, and nourish in 3 words. And typically they're in some rough sequence like that. They're not mutually exclusive, but they overlap. But once it clicks that that's all it takes to heal, yeah, that's it. But you don't get that going to a doctor's office. You get another set of lab tests, and you get another specialist who talks about one part of your body as if that works independent of all the other ones and your gut doesn't need, I don't know, respiration and et cetera, et cetera. So we just look at the body and the person as a whole person. And then we deal with whatever we triage to be the biggest upstream source of toxins, whether that's mind, emotion, or physical toxins. And then we work it out in a real life based on what they can afford and how much hours they can spend on working on their health, how much motivation they have, and take it as it comes. Then we got the theory part out of the way, and then we put the brass tacks of implementation after that by coaching. But really, that's what we do.
And now, which leads me to my next question. How important is, okay, so it's a 2-part question. So one would be, changing the environment that people can be in, because a lot of times what people don't understand is that we take on traits from other people.
Mm-hmm.
And and people don't understand that once you take on those traits, we begin to claim them as our own. And it can affect us the same as other people. That's what I like to call shared grief or community grief, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so people don't understand the effects of that as well. But also, removing yourself from those environments, those toxic environments, could be friends, could be family, could be, a work environment and things like that. People don't understand the depthness that can have on how you feel. And now, and the increase of parasites in our body, right?
Yeah.
People don't understand those parasites are coming from other places, things that you're putting into your body. They're feeding off the metals, which in turn, now I could be wrong, I will get your thoughts on this, but in turn can cause things like cancers or, congestive heart failures or, having chronic illness, as you said, 6 and 10 now, right? And that has gone up. So when I think about this one, I'm like, whoa, man, there's such a huge connection that people really look past. And when they go to the doctor, again, the doctors aren't looking for those things. And it takes individuals like yourself that have done the research, have done the work, to help people navigate and go, no, let's backtrack a little bit. Let's first start from these simple steps, right?
Yeah.
So how important is, understanding how those environments affect us mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and as well as physically?
Oh, it's of paramount importance. Jim Rohn said it well. He said you're going to become an average of the top 5 people you hang out with. And if the people you hang out with are chronically pessimistic, cynical, negative, into not so great behaviors, they don't read, they don't have any ambition, and you're with entitlement, victimhood, angry at the world people, you're going to be that kind of person. And if you want to break out of some of that toxic thinking, you've got to get around different people. And so I think it was David McClellan at Harvard said the number one factor that determines where someone goes in life is their reference group, meaning who they're hanging out with. And once we recognize that we are impacted by it, so sometimes that means removing yourself from toxic people and disassociating. Other times it means just family you can't always disassociate from, but you limit it. You find better boundaries and better rules of engagement, if you will. And then you open your eyes to expand. How do I get around other people who are wanting to get healthy? How do I get around other people who are growing in particular areas? And what you find is you read the books they read and you watch the videos they watch, and you have conversations about opportunities rather than pop culture. And you start to become a different person by being in a different environment. Same way if you were in a moldy environment, you'd want to remove yourself from that so that your body didn't have the burden and you could heal. And it's very much a parallel yet overlapping metaphor to say there's toxic people and there's toxic living things, microbes or chemicals, metals, that are, if they're in your environment and they've created this really unbalanced ecosystem, you're going to have a hard time. And sometimes the toxins are like some of the toughest things to purify are things in your mouth. Like if you got metal fillings, root canals, those can be highly toxic. And if you don't know how to deal with the removal of the source, or to mitigate it while you're saving up to remove the source of that burden, then that can be a source of body burden. And so, yes, environment really is everything. I would say it's, the way the CDC frames the reason we are so sick right now is they say it's 4 things. It's alcohol, tobacco, poor nutrition, and lack of exercise. Basically, all they're doing is pointing the finger at you and saying you're not doing a good enough job. It's all about your habits. And what they don't do is tell you about the environments that you're in that are creating the reason you're so sick. They're telling you to solve this complicated equation of your health by only focusing on your habits, not doing anything to clean up the environment or the inputs you have or the media you listen to or the toxic friends in your life or anything like that. And that sells a lot more and protects big business and so on. But yeah, environment really is probably the biggest factor. You could say habits times environment squared, and you've got a better formula for getting well.
I like that because what it all a lot of this boils down to is vibrational and frequency, right? Because we all operate on we all operate off of vibration and frequencies. Media is one of those things people don't understand affects our body as well, right? Especially if you're going through something, if you're going through something very deep or something like that, we have a tendency of finding things that we can relate to. The music that we listen to, they don't understand that these pitches that are being inputted into our brain, into our body, can have a very adverse effect, right? Along with so many other things as well, right? Lack of exercise. People don't understand. Sometimes you just have to get out and move. Sweating. Your body is equipped with these safe mechanisms, to help you function a lot more effectively. And people don't even pay attention to it because when you're hurting, when you're depressed and things like that, you don't want to do anything. You want to sit across the couch and eat that extra big old bag of Doritos, with that big old 2-liter, soda pop or something like that, right? Or eat that extra, big old cake that you got sitting in the fridge that you promised that you wouldn't eat the whole thing, but then next thing you know, you got a fork and a glass of milk down in it and everything. So I want to, I removing the negative energy in people. A lot of times, that's exactly what we was just talking about, my friend. We was just talking about removing that stuff from around you, changing your environment. But a lot of times, people have attachment issues to the people that are there with you. And it's important to be able to trust yourself, to be able to take the next steps, and begin to look deeper into what you're carrying. Right inside of you, and Shai, she's been coming to the channel and been supporting us and asking those questions as well. So I definitely appreciate you so much. Thank you so much. And so now, which leads me to my next thought and question. The parasites that build up into our body, why is it so hard for the doctors to pinpoint these things? Are they just not paying attention to them, or they're just looking to push more medicine on us?
Yeah, there's two levels at which to answer that. Really, there's one it's more conspiratorial, and I think there's legit evidence for that. That there's if you think about how the medical system works, it makes its money by creating customers for life. It makes its money by creating or by managing symptoms, essentially managing decline for your whole life. I saw a cartoon that said that the motto of day one of medical school was, a patient cured is a customer lost. So it's not really in the business of curing. It's in the business of finding symptom, treat symptom. And one great thing that creates all sorts of symptoms is parasites, there's so many other upstream sources of toxins that if we dealt with that, we'd cut off a whole host of symptoms. But why do that when you can medicate their toe fungus and their knee pain and their dental health and on and on? You can just keep going through this list of all the symptoms they have and not get at why the body is sick. There's a CIA document from 1950 that was published in 2011, shockingly, that identified that endoparasites look just like cancerous tumors. Why was that confidential? You'd think that would be something that would be worth being out in the public. And some of it's still redacted. And they even mentioned, we knew this a long time ago. In 1958, we knew this a long time ago. What? When were you going to tell us that this was a thing? So there's evidence like that. There's even another anecdote of a heart surgeon who resigned because the hospital he worked for would not let him tell patients that he pulled worms out of their heart when they gave heart surgery. So, because if you've got all these symptoms, you can get heart surgery. So that's one way to look at. It's more of a cynical, but I think not to be dismissed, reality of the world we live in, that medicine is first a business, and the more symptoms it has, the more business it can have. The other realm is just that there is a reality to the way we have adjusted our farming and the way that we have slowly poisoned ourselves over time, that we've created environments that are much more hospitable to these microbes. And even today in Western countries, US, Europe, typically, where those things just happen in Africa. Those are only for indigenous people groups. We don't get worms here. You don't have to worry about that. Our water is safe. Truth is, I would say pretty much everyone has parasites. Does everyone have a parasite problem is a little bit different. There's definitely robust debate on whether or not all parasites are pathogenic, meaning disease causing, or whether they are somewhat symbiotic and they help us in some level. But you certainly can have a parasite infection where there is just an infestation of them, creating a whole host of symptoms you wouldn't think to correlate to that kind of infection. And so once you understand that it's the imbalance of the microbiome inside you and the toxins they eat, they're there in nature to decompose things. That's what they do. It's what worms do. That's what mold does. And when there's plenty for them to decompose and rot that they have to eat all the time, of course they're going to proliferate. Of course they're going to get pregnant and lay more eggs and on and on. That's just part of what they're designed to do in nature. It's gross to think that's happening inside us, but if you're overweight or in a disease condition, there's a really good chance you have that as one of the upstream reasons why you're sick. And if you can identify, you just kind of metabolize the emotional reality of that, and you pass your first worm or two, you're like, yeah, well, I'm fine. Like, good riddance. Don't come back. You kind of sturdy up to the idea, and then you can chart a course to healing. And often that is one of the big upstream reasons. That, mold, heavy metals, dental problems, breast implants is another big one. And your mind and emotions, the toxins that we tell ourselves, are typically some of the biggest reasons why people are so sick. But medicine would prefer to treat all the downstream symptoms and tell you, nothing to see here. Have another medication for your cholesterol. Talk about a red herring. I could rant for a while about cholesterol and antacids and such. But yeah, that's the way the medical system works. And if you've never thought about parasites being a possible reason that you don't feel well, it's worth looking into. That's one of the things we teach people in our programs.
Yeah. And we got a few more comments coming over here on Instagram. So one is, if they don't make money from you, well, Sha was told by her doctor, they don't make money from her because she was too healthy till she had her stroke.
Ah,
And and again, after knowing a little bit about her story, we kind of find out that it's something that she's carrying inside of her that's unresolved. And
yeah.
once that, and we see this all across the board, right?
Mhm.
That sometimes people will carry these things with them until it does manifest itself. And when it manifests itself, we oftentimes don't know what to do,
Yeah.
right?
Right. Yeah.
And so we want to trust the people like doctors or our family physician and things like that, and it's crazy. And yes, that's exactly what I was going to get into, and so Shai said she had her second stroke
Mhm.
because of the medications they shoved in her IV,
I believe
right?
it.
So, and again, here's something, and I'm not saying all doctors are bad, but when a doctor has on makes you sign a waiver because they're practicing medicine, meaning that they're not there to treat the actual cause of what's
Hmm.
going on with you. They just dare to cover up the symptoms
Yeah.
to keep you coming back, because we've all heard these. We've all seen, exactly. They made you sign a waiver. Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. They made you sign that waiver. So if something was to happen, what I'm saying. They're not responsible for what happens. I mean, hell, prime example, when my son went into the hospital before he passed away. As a matter of fact, the night that he passed away, they made us sign a waiver saying that we're not responsible if my son passes away, and they would not treat him until we signed that waiver.
I got something you can do next time. If anybody gets in that situation where it's life or death or it's a significant emergency, even if it's just a minor emergency, when they shove that paper in your face and say, sign this, you can sign it just so you can get treated or get care, but right under duress next to your signature and
Yeah,
circle it. And that is your option to come back and say, look, this is a pressure situation. I needed help. I didn't have time to debate the merits of your liability policy here and bring my lawyer over. I needed help. But that gives you an ability to go back and have some sort of genuine recourse if there's egregious things done to you. So make sure when you sign those things at the hospital or the doctor's office, you can write under duress, especially if you feel that way.
yeah,
That will give you a little more wiggle room when it comes to getting the care that you want. They're going to see, if they see that on the chart, they're going to be more likely to give you the kind of care they would if it was a close family member they had.
yeah. And see, unfortunately, my situation turned really bad. Right, I ended up losing my son 2 hours later,
Golly.
from unknown causes, and it's because they couldn't diagnose him. They didn't know what was going on. And he had the signs of kidney failure. He had the signs of blood coagulation, right? So they couldn't, the doctor said we can't even get blood out of him to even run tests. And so we trusted him, right? Because we went from an emergency room down to a children's hospital. And both places, they were like, hey, we just need you to sign this and things like that. Now, a lot of times, people don't think the right duress. I'm under duress when you do this,
Hmm.
right? When we're going through these things, because we're thinking about, in my case and in my son's mother case, we were afraid,
Yeah. Right.
right? We were afraid of, what I'm saying, of what had happened. We were afraid of losing our child.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, we ended up losing him,
Mm. So sorry.
and no one would take responsibility for these things. No one. It was, and when we went to a lawyer, they even said the same thing. Now, I'm saying this to make a point to those that are here listening, right now. Like, it makes it hard to sue the hospitals when something like this happens,
Hmm.
because they've already had you sign that paper. And so when we talk to the lawyers is like, yeah, there's no way that we can sue the individual doctor, but what we can do is that we can go after the hospital
Hmm.
itself.
Yep.
It's not going to have the same sort of effect, because this does not affect the doctor whatsoever. That doctor's going to be out there, 2 hours later doing the same thing with someone else. And I think for me, it's not fair.
Yeah, you're one of many people who've, sounds maybe hyperbolic to depending on the listener, but who've experienced medical murder. And I wish I felt like I was overstating it when I say something like that. But there is a lot of, the system is not built to look out for you. It's built to look out for itself. And they have worked for decades and extensively created liability protections. Just look at the vaccine industry for the easiest example. You cannot sue a manufacturer for a death or disability or any sort of adverse events that came from the shot. They're impenetrable to that. And standard of care is one of the ways that the doctors get off. Oh, standard of care, we just followed what everyone's supposed to do. And so that phrase or that frame, as long as the doctor was a good little lemming and followed along, did what they're supposed to do, they're protected, and they can go, okay, that medication killed them, but it was at least standard of care. If they deviate from it, that's where they can get in trouble. So there's the number of stories I heard over the COVID era where people were sent to the hospital and just against their will, it's like they were in prison all of a sudden, and their loved ones are taken from them. And it's just like this, how in the world did we get to this medical cartel where they just dictate to us aggressive treatments that, one, are toxic and two, might kill somebody, because they can make a lot of money doing it. And it's uncomfortable to swallow that, but that's part of how the system worked. And so one way to have better health is to only go to the doctor if you have an emergency when it comes to anyone MD after their name. Our doctors, our medical system is actually quite good at trauma and emergency care. Outside of that, they're terrible. I don't have a use for them. I don't know why that we'd even go to somebody with MD after their name, because they're in the treatment business. The whole model is cut, burn, and poison. That's when all the fancy testing is over. Those are the three options you have left. It sounds barbaric to hear that, but let's be honest, that's what it is. And once we can realize there's so many other options to get well, but they systematically stamped them out in the early 1900s and put them in regulatory jail, or took away their funding, or vilified them and called them quacks and snake oil salesmen. And so it's taken us a long time to get the truth out, to get the treatments that are actually effective back into a competitive landscape. But we're making headway on that. And I think a lot of what COVID unearthed was kind of the ugly mask that slipped off the medical system. You're like, wait, I'm not sure this is looking out for me. This might be weaponized. This might only be about money. This might be about, dare I say, poison. So yeah, there's much to be eyes wide open if you choose to engage the medical system. And to your point, yeah, it's not every doctor. There's some gems out there, and I'm fortunate to know some of them. But we can question the system that was established and who built it and why they built it that way and how it functions. And when you start to do that, it doesn't give you warm fuzzies. It's a really ugly weaponized system that, one of my doctor friends, a retired medical doctor, says we need to drive a stake into the heart of this way of doing medicine. It is anti-human. And so anyway, I'll rant about that forever if you let me. So I'll just
you're totally fine. I was just looking at some of the comments over here. We have a few of them. Again, speaking about what you just said, Shai said it's a miracle I am listening to you, and they're 15 years of survivor. But they've been shoving medicine down their throat and everything that you were just talking about right there, and suffering from all the damages from the medications that that's been shoved down their throat, and they made it so that they can't sue, and just fortunate enough to make it out alive. And they actually, now here's something for you to do if you want to touch on this. They're forcing her to be sent to a facility. And, honor your heart says, man, that is a hard truth from what you was just saying. Right? You know what I'm saying? So there's people over here and they're going to compliment. They say, you're on fire. You're on fire over here. Yeah. Hey, I told you guys, man, we bringing some things to the table that most people don't even think about. And so if you got any questions for Kristen, what I'm saying, please put them in the comment section, man. we're diving deeper into this, right? You know what I'm saying? Like the conversation that Chris and I had when we first met, man. This man is impressive in the knowledge that he has, but most importantly, his approach to helping you. So, something to think about, right? Also his information is in the YouTube channel. And of course, what I'm saying, before I let him go, I'm gonna have him tell you where you can find him, reach out to him, and get the help that you need, man. And let's make a difference. Let's make a difference in your lives, most
Right.
importantly. So now, which leads me to this question, because again, when you've had unfortunate mishaps with the medical system,
Hmm. Most people
is
have.
there, and most people have, right? Is there, how do we put more training? Because we talk about police reform all the time,
Hmm.
but no one talks about medical reform
Yeah.
the way that it should be talked about on the level that it needs to be had. Because coming from a place, I'm a men's grief coach. I've been for 6 years, right? And so, I'm effective in my lane with helping men out and things like that. But I also set myself aside because learning, right? Learning different ways of being able to approach people in their healing, and things like that. And like I said, we don't look at just one part of the person. We look at multiple sections of it. We look
Hmm.
at the mental, the emotional, physical, as well as the spiritual.
Hmm.
And the spiritual is an option because most people aren't spiritual. Most people may not have those beliefs and things like that. And so, we try to respect them, in whatever their belief system is. But the other three, I like to say these are mandatory things, right? You know what I'm saying? Because the physical affects the way you can affect whether or not if you wake up tomorrow,
Yeah.
right? It can affect the way, what I'm saying, whether in 5 minutes you have a heart attack or a seizure and things like that. So we look at what you put into your body. You know what I'm saying? Are you getting enough sunlight? Are you drinking, the right type of fluids? Like for me, I'm a huge believer in drinking amino acids, and things like that, because I love the way that it builds, that it replenishes my muscles, keeps me from cramping up, but also like the fact that there's no sugars added to it, no refined sugars, and it's natural, right? It's a building block for your muscles.
Hmm.
But also, the other little things that we do, eating clean. So I'm a firm believer in growing my own food, but also, if I get the chance to go out and hunt, I go out there and I will hunt elk, I will hunt turkey. That's just me though, right? Because I like to know where my food comes from,
Right.
and
Good
I
for
know
you.
how to process it.
That's
But
great.
so things like that people don't necessarily pay attention to, that can lead you down a healthier path.
Hmm.
Now, how do you recommend people watch what they put into their body? Or, if a person doesn't have the budget to go out and do those things, and things like that, what's some alternatives that people can use in order to get what they need, um, more effectively?
Well, yeah, let me circle back to close a loop, at least in my own head, related to a comment you made just a little bit ago, and it'll start to answer the question you just asked. But what do we do with this medical system that just really the shine has come off the halo? The short answer is just disengage it. Stop using
Hmm.
it. Find a different kind of doctor. If you need a doctor, find a coach. Think differently about the problem, because that system isn't interested in solving your health problem. It's interested in medicating your health problem. And when your body breaks down, it's interested in cutting parts of your body out and throwing them into trash. And then you have one less part that could be diseased. Okay, great. But it didn't fix anything. So part of the answer to your question of where do you start and how do you put better things in your body? One is you cut off the influx of toxicity in the form of medications. But then you look broader, like there's medications in your meat. There's medications in your water. There are toxins all over. And so once you like, there's a few key books you could read, or a few key, you know, websites, places you can follow to really get your head around the breadth of the problem. And once you let the wave of overwhelm pass, like, oh, this is kind of everywhere. Yeah, you can pretty much find anything in anything at this point. Heavy metal, plastic, pesticide, they're everywhere. Nobody can escape them. So once it clicks that that's part of it, then it's just about making better choices. And so if you're going to start anywhere when it comes to your health, I'll give you 3 key ones that are a big deal. Your water, you got to have filtered water. You do not want to be drinking tap water, even if it's from a well. And my county or my city is great and they have clean water. Filter it anyway. Just humor me. 5-micron filter, just get it. You want a good quality water filter so you can stop the influx of toxins in your water. Another big one is your meats. So if you're gonna increase your food budget anywhere, start buying organic meats, or better yet, meet your farmer and get to know their farming practices. So organic does not mean perfect. They're doing their darndest to water down that label and squeeze in. That's mostly parts of it organic, not all of it. But so look for pasture raised eggs, meats, etc. So find your good start. If you only have one place to increase your food budget, start with your meats. But typically you can cut out soda and your Starbucks habit and other things. And sure enough, you have the money for it. You just needed to shift it. The other thing that's paramount would be to cut out ruthlessly vegetable oils. If you have or are eating vegetable oils, better named seed oils, and that's pretty much all the center aisles down the grocery store typically are packed with seed oils. They are worse for you than sugar. They rot you from the inside out. They clog up your arteries and they're just rot, if you want to think of it that way. They're literal poisons. So that's anything fried for that matter. You go to any restaurant, I guarantee you they're using the cheapest oil they can find and they're boiling your food in it. So French fries, donuts, they're easy sources of aggressive vegetable oil poisoning that you can cut off. But look at your box of crackers and chips and beans, it's just shocking how much they're everywhere. So if you don't know what vegetable oils are, those are your rapeseed, grapeseed, cottonseed, soy, bean oil, corn oil, et cetera, et cetera. Those seed oils are awful for you. They're one of the worst things you could possibly ever eat. So what replaces them? Well, that would be great oils like your avocado or your coconut oil. Your animal fats get so vilified and they're so healthy. If you get a good quality grass-fed beef, tallow, confit, which is duck fat, suet, which is chicken fat, those animal, even lard, animal fats can be exceedingly healthy and they can handle heat, and they're the way your grandmother used to cook. So cut out the industrial foods, the industrial seed oils that are made with profit in mind, that need to be colored and deodorized to even make it palatable, and return to natural fats, natural oils. You can have your olive, you can have your coconut oil, and then get your animal fats right. And just that alone can dramatically improve your health. And I've just cleared my throat on the stuff I could tell you about that would make a difference for your health. So those are the most approachable attack vectors typically.
Yeah. I was just watching some of the emojis Travis putting up, brain health, avocado, coconut, all of those different things. Yes, girl, you already know these are things that you have to, well, you don't have to, but they're worth looking into, right? Growing, like I'm a huge believer in growing your own food. I really am.
As much as you can, yeah.
Right, as much as you can, and it's not hard to do. It just takes time and a mindset to do it.
Yeah.
Right. And so I want to talk about the importance of having the mindset to be able to want to change your lifestyle for the better, and for your own well-being, for your own balance, right? To be able to live a good, healthy life. Like it's really not as hard as what people think, but most people, and this is, and I could be wrong with this, but most people are addicted to the things that they put into their body because they taste good. Most of the things that you do put in your body is designed to be addictive. This is, and this can be a problem. It's an addiction nonetheless, right? It's just like the heroin addict or the meth addict or the alcoholic. It's an addiction. If you need that Starbucks coffee every morning, you might want to rethink that, right? I grind up my own coffee beans, things like that. So I do pay attention to those things, but I eat fairly clean. I try to stay very simple. I go fishing, so I fish for my own fish. Right, I catch my own fish. I process it. I know how to fillet it. All those different things. And like I said, my meats and stuff that I put into my body, I know where it comes from because I do go out and I will hunt. Right, everything from mountain lion to bear to elk antelope, those simple things, turtle, things that people don't think about that have a really high nutritional body or value to your body.
Mhm.
And then when you think about brain health and things like that, I do look at those things because they're omega oils that I get from my fish, depending
Mhm.
on what I'm fishing for,
Yeah.
right? You know what I'm saying? I do get those, which actually helps the neurons fire at a higher capacity,
Mhm.
which in turn, if I'm going through something like depression and things like that, I look for certain plants, right? Things that you may dismiss.
Mhm.
Dandelion root, which most people will look at as a weed, don't understand that it does have healthy kidney function properties. It has healthy heart function properties,
Yeah.
but also it's a natural blood cleanser. A lot of
Mhm.
people don't know that neither, right? But we quick to go, oh, look at the dandelion root, got to cut it down and treat it as a weed. You got to go out there and spray it instead of
Yes.
picking it up and drying it out, maybe making a tea, maybe adding it to your foods and things like that. People don't think about those things,
Mhm.
right? Because they get told, from the people that some people trust that no, you don't put that into your body. And as you
Yep.
said, grapeseed oil. A lot of people would think grapeseed oil would be good for you, right? Because it comes from a grape, not understanding that this can be the root cause of your cancerous tumors,
Okay, well, it
right?
could be contributing for sure. Yeah, that
Or contributing
typically
to
there's
it.
unlikely that one thing is the tipping point. It's typically it's a you can picture the straw that breaks the camel's back. I've actually found pictures like, oh, they really do put a lot of straw on a camel's back. But at some point, it's too much. And
Yeah,
really, the only reason we get sick is susceptibility. And the two things that make us susceptible are toxins and malnourishment. And we can define toxins by mental toxins too. So we've got ourselves covered. Like that's why we get sick. You button up those two areas well enough, you got to clean out what's already in there, and that's our sweet spot. And sure enough, it's amazing. The number of stories I could tell you of people's health recovering just because
mm,
they figured that it was that simple. To your point, a healthy, I say this often to clients, and it's like, oh, thank you. A healthy lifestyle is not hard. What's difficult is transitioning from an unhealthy one to a healthy one. You got to face yourself. You might have to adjust your budget a little bit. You might have to hire an expert to speed up the process. And it might not always be super convenient. And you got a few things to learn, like how to hunt and grow your own food like you do. Like talk about a man card. Like, well done, Tony. Those are ways that you can take ownership of your health. And here's the maybe a reasonable summary thought. No one is coming to save you. No one is going to manage your
that's
health
it.
habits for you. You are going
That's
to have
it.
to take ownership of it because Superman's not about to show up and just feed you. You're going to have to learn, and you will only have health if you earn it and fight for it. But I can tell you, so many of
That's
my clients work harder at their health than I do because I don't have health debt. I'm not trying to climb out of this mountain of symptoms. I've paid my dues, and my food and my habits are my health insurance, and I don't live with symptoms because I earned it. And you can apply that to relationships or finances or building a business or whatever. But that's that's the secret to life is take ownership. And sure enough, you can have such robust health with that mindset.
mm, I love that. We got a comment from Honor Your Heart. Disconnected from wisdom, yes, and
Right.
hopefully, listen to Christian. He's putting a lot of wisdom out there. And we haven't even scratched the surface. I want you guys to go check him out, right? Because he does talk about a lot of this stuff on your podcast
I
as
do have a
well,
podcast.
right?
Yeah.
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 Okay. So, and guys, I'm going to make sure that you guys have his information as well. But you were saying something, and what it reminded me of, especially with the comment from Honor Your Heart, a lot of times the information is there, and it reminds me of someone who was really big in understanding how the body works, Dr. Sebi,
Mm.
right? And his wisdom, and what he was sharing to the world. And unfortunately, he did pass away. Of course, there's conspiracy about that because if I remember correctly, he was the first person, or yeah, he was the first person to actually cure multiple people with HIV without any symptoms. And he talked about mucus. He talked about the buildup and what it causes in the body, and how to address those things and remove it from the body. And people begin to live a
Hmm.
lot better lives because the mucus. What he found was is that the mucus was the root cause of a lot of people's illnesses,
Mm.
because of the heavy metals, because of the toxins and the things that they were putting into their body.
Yeah.
And so he got them on a really good path. And somewhere down the line, his books are still out there, but unless someone tells you about it, you'll never know that they're there. So it's good to have that wisdom, have that knowledge. And of course, Christian, you're out there making a difference in people's lives, man, with just what you just put out here today. And so which now leads me, because I know you're probably busy today and everything, and I'm just honored and privileged just to even be able to have this conversation with you, man. It's truly amazing. And again, we haven't even scratched the surface.
Yeah,
right?
we may have to keep talking, Tony. There's more to talk about.
Oh, then, well, okay, let's open up the doors, man, because hey, we can go as long as we want, man. We go
Well,
as long as
let
we
me
want.
see. I think I have an appointment in 20 minutes. Let's see. I got another 20 for you if you want. Yeah, so you keep going.
Okay, well, let's talk about the importance of holistic health,
Okay.
right? Let's talk about the importance of holistic health and how we can get back to the root cause or the root treatment that it offers.
Mm-hmm. Well, the way that I look at health, it took me a while to kind of crystallize this, but essentially we've come to call it the biological laws of physics. You cannot fight that. If you want to get well, you can't out-exercise a bad diet. You can't drink more water to make up for not sleeping. You can't, think yourself well and never drink water and not sleep. Like there's some things we all just have to practice, and we reap the benefit of doing it, or we suffer the consequence of not doing it. And so so for us, we identified 7 real areas of health, and I'm cheating a little bit because it's mind and emotions is one, nutrition and hydration is another, mind and emotions, restorative healthcare. So there are genuinely times in life where you need somebody who knows how to use dandelion root to help you with an infection or whatever. You need somebody to put their hands on you and massage that cramp or what. There's reason for, in my mind, I say restorative healthcare to juxtapose it against medical care. Medical care typically in the way, but there's sleep, rest, and play is another category. Like they're 3 different things, but they're all restorative. Obviously we know what sleeping is, but resting is like, what are you doing that's not work when you're awake? Like, what's your downtime like? And play is just a different gear. It's like you enjoy it so much you get lost in it and you lose track of time, and it's novel. And I can't argue this contributes to the greater good, but gosh, that was fun. Like that's a human need. And if we don't have any play, we kind of become cranky, and people don't like hanging out with us. And then the last category is mind and emotions. Actually, stress management. I missed that one. So we're not gonna ever live in a world free of stress. We do have to manage that as best as possible. Some of that is cutting off influx of body burden. Some of that's just coming up with better life philosophies and not taking ourselves so darn seriously, right? But the last one is meaningful connection. And that's connection to God. That's connection to others. That's connection to a purpose. You could even argue connection to the earth. There's some things that we need and crave, and our hearts ache without them. And if we want to be well, and we're disconnected from friends, and we have no play in our life, and we just have a mountain of stress, and we don't drink water, and our health habits stink, and we don't go to bed on time, and we eat crappy food, I'm sorry, but you're not going to get well. So pick 1 or 2 of those. And where could I get better at that? Because that's where health returns. And then it's exponential math. 1 + 1 starts to equal 5, and 2 + 2 equals 100. Because the more hydrated you are, and the more rested you are, and nourished at the same time, guess how much better your body functions? Every function you have gets better. And we haven't even biohacked. We haven't even done a cleanse yet. We haven't even done mindset work. We've just worked at getting better at a few things that reinforce each other. And when you can take health is kind of just returning to the basics. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Go for a walk, get some fresh air, exercise, eat better food, drink water, go to bed on time. We don't need to overcomplicate this with a whole bunch of specialists. I've actually made up a new word, partialists, to replace or redefine what a specialist is. It's somebody who looks at a tiny part of the problem or of your symptoms and really zooms in, is like, oh, let's just focus on that one thing. Oh, your lab test says this, as if that's everything to know about you. And when you can realize you don't need another partialist, I need to just do what I already know to do and swallow the tough medicine that Christian said earlier, that nobody's coming to save you. You can go get another pill and they can cut out another part of your body, or you can have an extreme surgery to. I just saved somebody from a uterine ablation back in February. Like, she had a surgery scheduled for March and we canceled it because she healed. She's not bleeding heavily anymore. So the body knows how to heal, but we had to return to the basics. We taught her, we changed how she ate, we put her through a cleanse, and we taught her how to fast. Simple. Like, it's so much easier. She had head to toe eczema her whole life. And we got it down in 3 months. We got it down to just her forearms, and she lost 36 pounds. And she skipped a major surgery that was permanent. But it only took 3 months because all we did was return to the basics with a very strategic, methodical eye. So yes, your comment is bullseye. If you do not think holistically about where are these problems coming from, where am I allowing toxicity into my life, other people or metal, chemical, microbial, whatever, and where are my health habits going to be an asset in stewarding this body to better health? As long as you get that frame, gosh, it's so easy to get well. But the doctors are shocked sometimes at the results we get because you can't do that. Like, I just did. And because they're not thinking that way, they're thinking treatment. We're thinking healing. I can't treat anything. I'm a coach. I can't prescribe a medication. I can't treat any disease condition. I can't even tell you that water will cure dehydration. I can't even tell you water will prevent dehydration. All I can do is tell you water can help with the symptoms of that dehydration. So once you get out of the framework of find symptom, treat symptom, and you're just like, how would the body, the only thing that can handle the complexity of all of your health history, all that's going on in your head, and all the moving parts of your life, and all the toxins you're exposed to, the only thing that could possibly handle that level of complicated math is your body. That's it. It knows exactly what to do. You just got to get out of the way. So I say that to hopefully inspire a little bit of hope in people. Like, your situation, I promise you, is not hopeless. But it's not going to come with another specialist. It's going to come with a generalist and a methodical plan to get your health in order, get your house in order, get your mindset in order, and boom, your body can heal. So anyway, I can soapbox for a while.
No, I love that because, and I know that, being a person that I am, I'm huge on nutrition. I'm huge on all of those things that you were just talking about, mindset, things like that. But I also have done a lot of research. I have done, I looked at my body and I started putting two and two together because the one thing I used to suffer with a long time ago was nosebleeds. And a lot of times what people don't understand, if you put things in your body that dehydrate you, it does something to your blood. Like, it will thicken your blood, which in turn, if your blood gets thick, it has nowhere to go. So it would choose an orifice to come out of. A lot of times your nose, right? Which is normally followed by severe headaches, migraines, and things like that. But I love the fact that you said, once you begin to talk to a person, you begin to see where their habits are, and you look at the root cause of these things and go, let's change this up a little bit. Let's change this. Let's change this. Let's look at this right here, right? And you begin to take the approach, a non-invasive approach, right? Something that every person can do. Now, what I mean by that, look at it in a financial sense. If you can go out once a week to maybe your favorite, restaurant or something like that, look how much you spend on that, right? Whereas if you took that money, instead of going out, and you went and to your local butcher and you got a cow process, maybe got some chickens, maybe buy some eggs from them and things like that, things that that are going to be healthier. If you can, so that's just one approach that I've looked at. But if you got 5 hours on a Saturday or Sunday where you're not doing anything, grab a fishing pole, go out. It's going to do two things for you. It's going to give you your vitamin D, but also it gives you another means to getting something natural and healthier. Like, if you catch a fish, I wouldn't recommend catching all the small fish. Let the small fish grow up and get bigger. But if you can catch yourself a few decent fish and things like that, learn how to fillet them, learn how to cook them up with natural things, macadamia nut oil, right? I know that's been a huge thing that people have been talking about, that has made a comeback. A lot of people don't know that these things are making a comeback. They're being recycled back into society, right? And I watch a few podcasts and things like that. They're like, dude, you don't understand. Like, these things are here, right? So be mindful of those things. Like you said, I think our elders, our grandparents had it down pat when they were like, no, we're cooking with lard today, right? Because we
Hmm.
didn't have vegetable oil or corn oil and things. So we had the big old things of lard that they put in there. It was like, this is what we're frying it with. And it's just animal fat,
Yeah.
right? And you don't understand the effects that it has on your body, because it is necessary, right? For your body to be able to function. Your body is made to process these things.
Hmm.
And don't get me wrong. For my vegetarian friends out there, hey, if it makes you healthy, do it, right? You know what I'm saying? But just keep in mind this, that there are certain things that you will need in order for your body to function at its highest capacity,
Hmm.
right? Brain function, organ function, and all of those different things. So share some of your thoughts on that for me, please. I know you talked, but you touched on it a little bit. Share some more of your thoughts on that.
Well, yeah, animal foods. Like if you look, I've got 2 episodes on my podcast. It took me 2 hours to answer a basic question: what is a natural human diet? And one of the things I had to get into was to have a nuanced conversation about animal foods, because the plant-based world or the vegetarian or vegan world typically just makes this statement. They say animal foods, as if all animals are raised the same. Are we talking wild animal? Are we talking about one in a confined animal
Mhm.
feeding operation? Are we talking about one on pasture that's got wildly different fat profile? And so I made the comparison. If I said vegan soy cheese pizza and donuts and French fries, and I just said plant, I would consider that plant food. You probably wouldn't appreciate it if I could just, that's all. Just stay away from plant food with no nuance. What's like all those were plant foods, but none of them are good for you. And if when it comes to animal fats, they got vilified. Really, Ansel Keys, and there's a long history to this ugly history. But the short version is they vilified animal fats in order to is a more or less a commercial purposes to bring in seed oils and to bring in sugar and grains. And so those, as we pushed out the fats that have been traditionally healthy for generations, and we brought in these unnatural foods that it takes factories and industry and mechanical digestion in order to be able to produce and turn into food like things. We pushed out real nutrition, and that's part of why we're so sick. We've brought toxicity into our food system on top of the rest of the toxicity we have. And our food has just become a source of poison for a lot of people. And one of the big ones we talked about was these seed oils. And if you just, there's a video I got on my site about how they make canola oil, and they're telling you, like, isn't this great? And you're like, no, that's disgusting. Like, they have to break it down with high heat and treat it with gases and oils or deodorizers and other chemicals just to make it look like something you'd actually cook with. No,
Mhm.
thank you. I don't want that. And yeah, really just returning to the foods that are, you can't make a lot. How do you get cottonseed oil in vats? You need machines for that. Nobody does that, but we can do it with machines because it's cheap. And so going back to the real oils, the real nutrition that is, you can think of it as ancestral nutrition. Boy, it's a better way to live. And yeah, your body will respond positively because it knows what to do with that. So the nutrition has been a fun topic for me because I've spent so much time on it over the years. But once you get that your medicine is your food, no, you can't heal without good medicine. Sometimes what a mistake people make when they start to get on the path, there's so many different versions of roughly or typically helpful things: keto, paleo, so on. So carnivore, you can be healthier. But something that you can miss in the changing of your diet is that often people jump, like the process I laid out earlier of the unburden, purify, and to nourish. A lot of people jump to nourish because they recognize some of what I'm saying, like I've got to eat better. And you make some good gains with it, but often people skipped cutting off the toxicity in other aspects of life. That could be medications, that could be vaccines, that could be personal care products. That could be lawn care. That could be Glade plugins in your home. That could be any number of things that are toxic for your body. If you don't reduce that body burden, and if you don't have a methodical way to clean your body out, to purify of the lifetime of built up plastics and pesticides and hormone disrupting chemicals and metals and parasites and microbes, if you don't know how to purify that, what you eat, all those other things get the first fruit. You're essentially putting good food in a dirty sink, because you can't use it as well. So if you unburden and you purify the body, then that nutrition just comes alive. It can do so much more for you because your microbes and your parasites aren't eating it and pooping in you. You've got a cleaner environment from which your nutrition can benefit you. Then you can get to optimize, which is a whole different fun stage of, that's where most of the biohacker stuff is. I'm going to do red light. I'm going to do methylene blue. I'm going to do, electromagnetic PEMF devices, and ozone. We skip cleaning out the body and nourishing the body. That stuff is minimally helpful if that's the whole strategy. But once you can see it methodically, I got to cut off the toxic influx. That's number one. Then I got to purify. I got to go through a really concentrated, well thought out detox for my own body and bring in nourishment on the back end, including these good animal fats we're talking about. Woo! That's how I get results for people, and how we get results for people, where you're just like, how did you do that? All I did was give the body a shot at healing, and it knows what to do. I don't know where all the gum is on the seats, where all the skeletons are buried in the body. I just know that it knows. All I got to do is give it the scenario it needs to clean it out, and teach people how to fast, which is a whole different level of healing. Sure enough, body can overcome just about anything. So yeah, don't get too ahead on nutrition. You certainly want to work on cleaning up your diet. But if you've kind of plateaued with that, or you're like, I feel like I've tried every diet out there, then something comes before that. And what I'm telling you is what comes before it is unburden and purify. You get those two down, look out, you can heal.
Yeah. And I want to just add to that, because again, it goes back to what I said in the beginning, trust in yourself, right? Trusting yourself to do what is necessary, listening to your body for the most part, because your body will keep the score, but it will let you know what it needs. Mm-hmm. And there's no substitute for what it's telling you it needs, right? Yeah. Because your body knows how to heal itself. You just have to pay attention to it. But without being wrapped up into your environment, to the medications, to, looking at what other people are doing, but following your instincts. These are important, right? Yeah. And so, I encourage people to do those things, but also because I know you got to go. That's why you made us went by fast, man.
Well, we can do this again if we need to.
I would love to. Anybody want us to do a part two? Because we can make that happen. Yeah. We definitely, brother, we're going to make that happen. Okay. So now, before I let you go, tell people how they can find you.
Oh, thanks for that. So yeah, we have our main website is healingunited.today. We wanted some urgency in our URL, so that's why it's not .com. So healingunited.today, you can find us. I hate to say this, about 1 or 2 out of 10 people, it seems like they can't navigate to our site, which makes me suspicious, because I've built so many websites and never had this problem. So I'll give you a link to it. I cloned an alternate version of our site in case people run into the, I'll just call them gatekeepers, and can't find our site. But so healingunited.today, you can find that. My podcast is Deconstructing Conventional. That's on the website as well. You can also find it at deconstructingconventional.com. And our main social channel is Instagram. So if you're on Instagram, you can find us at True Whole Human. That is our private coaching business. Healing United is the collaboration I'm with other doctors and coaches to help people heal. So you can find me on LinkedIn, or you can email me, christian@truewholehuman.com. And that's pretty much it. I'm relatively tech light, or I have kind of an allergy to social media, actually. I prefer to just uninvent it, but I appreciate the upside of it sometimes. So, yeah, my wife does most of the managing of that. Yeah.
I definitely understand. I just put your information over on Instagram, and I have that information in the YouTube channel. So, Grief, Let's Talk About It podcast. Go check that out. But also, how can people find your podcast?
It's on the web, either a website, truewholehuman.com or healingunited.today. You can also, anywhere you've listened to podcasts, you can find it. Just look for Deconstructing Conventional is the name of the show. And if you see that, you'll see a picture of me in I think it's an orange shirt. And It's holistic thinking in a fragmented world is the subtitle. So I've got 40 something episodes now and a few more scheduled. So anyway, thanks for the honor of being on your show today, Tony. It's been great.
Yeah, man. I can't let you go just yet. I got one other question for you. One
Okay,
other
what's that?
question. If you had a superpower, what would it be?
Ooh, a superpower? I would want to be Solomon and have the option for as much wisdom as I can ask for. That would be my ask. Yeah, because I never feel like I have enough. Like there's always a new wrinkle. Like, what do I do with this one? So every day I'm like just looking for more wisdom. So yeah, it would be like a direct line to divine wisdom, I think would be or to a matrix style download. Just put it in the back of my head. And that would be, I don't know how that's a superpower, but that would be my
No, I think that's beautiful, right? Because I think most people will say something like superhuman strength, teleportation, flying, but no one ever really thinks about wisdom, right? And how that can be contributed to having a superpower, because wisdom is the key to everything that you do.
right.
Who like for me, like, and I can respect it because that's one of my goals. I want to learn. I want to be, I want to be informed. And through that, I want to have a depthness of wisdom that, far surpasses anything that I've ever thought.
Mm-hmm.
And so, it's a true journey, but
It
it's
is.
one that once you embark on it, you have to see it through. You have to explore everything that comes along with it, because the world is your knowledge, is your book. You just have to be able to ask the right questions.
Yeah.
And
No,
now,
you're right.
with that being said, guys, we're going to go ahead and wrap this up. Thank my guests for being up here. We will be doing a part two. You know what I'm saying? Because I love these conversations that we have, and you guys are enjoying it as well. With that being said, Kristen, thank you for allowing me to be a part of your journey, your story, and just a part of your wisdom and sharing it with the audience today. And for everyone else, thank you for allowing me to keep bringing these conversations to you guys. And we're going to see you guys in the next one. I love you. And always thank you for your continued support. Have a great day. We're going to see you guys in the next one.
All right. Bye, everyone.